This story, this book that I'm about to narrate is life-changing, and I do not say that lightly. It will change your perspective and your perception of this reality that we say that we are living in. That was a bit timing of that doesn't go unnoticed. So this book was written by D. Alan Holmes. You may already know what this book is, without me even telling you. But it's called The Enlightenment, and it's part 0. Now, whether there was more written, I don't know. Yeah. But it's called A Handbook on Illusion by D. Alan Holmes, who is or was an adventurer, an author, a philosopher, an authority on ESP, past lives and UFOs. This is the back of the book. Perhaps there are wiser men than he, but no one can explain the mysteries and riddles of this universe with as much clarity and simplicity. Wisdom has indeed been brought down to earth. And I think this was meant to be a film as well. And this is the original manuscript. You cannot get this book in a physical form. I looked and looked and looked, unless there's someone out there who's got a copy. But so I'm reading from a PDF, and I will actually put the link so you can download the PDF as well. So yeah, okay. Anything else? Written in or copyrighted in 1982. It says the Enlightenment is a trademark for a continuous series of philosophical handbooks by D. Alan Holmes. It was definitely meant to go further, definitely. So yeah, I'm gonna narrate this. It says, in tribute to Zeus, Gautama Siddhartha, Jesus Christ, and L. Ron Hubbard. And a special affection to Richard Bach. Now, I've read his books, and he's pretty awesome. And this... it's been signed as well. I think it's signed by Jerome Garone as well. Because it says, special thanks and acknowledgement to my friend and fellow truth seeker, Jerome Garone. Without his support and inspiration, this book would not exist. So, I'm going to start reading. So what I'm going to do, because this book is kind of in 2 parts, so I'm going to upload each part separately, because it's quite a long listen. Okay, so it's going to be in 2 parts, and this noise, that's just me scrolling up and down. It's not some weird some weird sound effect to represent something. Okay, so this is the introduction. Hello, my name is Alana Taylor. The incredible story you are about to read is true. At first, it may not appear to be, and to tell you the truth, even though I actually experienced all of the events contained in this book, I still find myself wondering at times if it wasn't all a dream. However, it is during those moments of doubt that I recall most vividly Talawanda's parting words. If it can be experienced, it exists. You cannot experience something which doesn't exist. So, it is up to you. As you read my story, decide for yourself if it is true, for only you can make that decision. As for myself, by the time you read these words, I shall be reunited with my eternal companion, Talawanda. Signed, Alana Taylor. Note from the author. Alana Taylor has not been seen or heard from by anyone since July 21st, 1981. On that day, we had finished compiling all the necessary materials for this book. It was a very special day for her. She seemed extremely happy, and as though her work in this world had been completed. This is her story. Part 1. The Encounter. Los Angeles, California, Friday the 21st, 1978. I remember how it all started. I had a date with Walter Haber, one of the architects at Lynch and Associates, where I worked as a secretary. Maybe I'm crazy, but Walter wasn't really a turn-on for me. Sure, he had a lot going for him, a nice house, a new car and a good job, but he was still earthbound. He just wasn't Superman. See? I said I was crazy. Normally, I would not have gone out with Walter. However, he mentioned that he had a membership to the Magick Castle. Quick footnote. The Magick Castle is a private magic club located in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles, California. So he had a membership to the Magick's Castle, and that there was going to be a rare performance given by an illusionist named Talawanda. Don't ask me how I knew, but something told me that I had to see that performance. I was just putting the finishing touches on my makeup when Walter arrived, promptly at 7 o'clock, to pick me up at my apartment. We drove to a nearby restaurant where we enjoyed a leisurely meal until it was time to leave for the Magick Castle. Upon our arrival at the castle, we were cheerfully assisted from the car by the valet attendants. Proceeding into the lobby, we were greeted by the castle hostess, who politely inquired, "Good evening. Are you members?" "Going on 4 years," Walter responded enthusiastically as he produced the membership card from his vest. The hostess smiled as she pressed a nearby button. Suddenly, the wall behind her slid open like a secret panel, permitting us to pass into the main ballroom. Our timing couldn't have been better. It was just a few minutes before showtime. Then came the first miracle. Despite the near-capacity crowd, we ended up in the centre of the first row, directly in front of the stage. Walter immediately observed, "This Talawanda must be something special. I've been a member here for over 4 years and I've never felt this much excitement from an audience in anticipation of any performer." An old man in the row behind us leaned forward in response to Walter's remark and commented, "That's because Talawanda has never performed for the public until tonight. He is considered a master magician and performs only for professional magicians. No one even knows where he comes from, and they only know that he is the best. All of his tricks defy explanation. Why, I remember one time he—" Suddenly, his words were interrupted as the ballroom lights rapidly dimmed and the old man leaned back in his seat without finishing his statement. I could feel suspense in the air. It was like static electricity before a storm. The anticipation was torturing the crowd, and then, as if everyone had just received a radio signal from God to shut up, the audience became deathly silent. Then, to everyone's amazement, and especially mine, he appeared, but he didn't appear from behind the curtains. He rose from the seat right next to mine. No one had even noticed him sitting and waiting there. It was almost as though he had been invisible. As Talawanda walked confidently up the stairs and onto the stage, the audience exploded into thunderous applause. I'll never forget his godly presence. He stood there tall and confident, like a 5-star general inspecting his troops. He had bright blue eyes and black hair, which was neatly slicked back like some high-fashion European model. Majestically, he raised his left hand to silence the crowd. It was then that he uttered the most startling challenge that I have ever heard. "Those of you who are actually convinced that this world you live in is not an illusion, just stick around." He paused dramatically and then said, "Most of you have never seen me before. I am pleased that you are here. Thank you for coming. It is my hope that you may learn something this evening, not only about this world you live in, but about yourselves as well, for this world would not exist if it were not for you and your fellow beings. If I fail to teach you something tonight, then I hope that I may at least entertain you. You've been promised a show, and a show you shall receive. Many of you are skilled magicians. I invite you to challenge me." With this, the crowd stirred with intense eagerness. One middle-aged professional magician stood up and admired Talawanda's unique approach. "Can you materialize a dollar bill from thin air?" the man inquired. Talawanda grinned. "Why not a $2 bill, my friend?" "Why not a $2 bill for all my friends?" Talawanda smiled and paused. "You are a little wiser and richer now." "Don't be timid," Talawanda commanded. "Inspect your new wealth." And as he said that, the crowd began to search their purses and pockets, only to find a nice crisp $2 bill for everyone. The crowd rose to his feet and roared with applause. "How does he do it? It's absolutely amazing!" voices from the crowd exclaimed. Talawanda quieted the audience and requested the next challenge. "I shall grant you 2 more illusions," Talawanda informed his audience. Can you escape from these handcuffs of mine? An eager man inquired as he held up a pair of police regulation handcuffs. Talawanda responded as the audience grew silent once more. My friends, I am afraid you really are much more powerful than you ever imagined. You are truly magicians, because you have succeeded in convincing even yourselves that this world is not an illusion. Today, you believe that an illusion, such as those handcuffs, is capable of restricting you. You see, for me, this world is like a dream. That is the difference between you and me. I never took this illusion you call reality as seriously as you apparently have. While you were busy facing reality, I preferred to fabricate my own. While you were busy inventing interesting new handicaps to inflict upon yourselves, I was watching from another universe. This is why I am able to have things come and go as I please. As Talawanda finished his speech, the pair of handcuffs that the man was holding floated out of his hands and up towards the stage. The handcuffs stopped about 10 feet from the stage and hovered 4 feet off the floor. There, they began to glow like burning coal and grew brighter and brighter until they shone like the noontime sun. Then, suddenly, they were gone. Totally vanished. And the audience went wild with applause. They stood and clapped for better than a minute and then grew silent, eagerly waiting for the next trick. Talawanda laughed. I hope you see the problem. So you have become so lazy about creating your own illusions that now you depend on excitement from a source other than yourself. No wonder you've lost your touch. No wonder you keep hanging on to this universe. You've got nowhere else to go. In any event, I owe you one last illusion for this evening. What shall it be? Walter embarrassed me a little when he raised his hand and asked, Can you prove that your illusions are real? Talawanda sighed. My son, come forth, come up on stage. Walter rose from his seat and proceeded up the stairs and onto the stage as Talawanda directed. My son, you ask for proof. That means you want to be convinced. I'm afraid you have been convinced of enough already. You're convinced that you are a mortal with no past lives. That's the biggest joke of all. You're convinced that you are your body. You're convinced of that because you're stuck inside. You're convinced of all sorts of silly things, like the floor is solid, or that you need gasoline to run your car, or that the world is dangerous. Remember, as a man thinketh, so be it unto him. Do you know what that means? It means that if you believe strongly enough about something, it will happen for you, and possibly for others also if your belief is strong enough. But instead of exercising your power of belief, you have allowed yourself to be convinced of a million things, and that is why you're in such trouble today. You don't even think your own personal illusions are real. In fact, modern humans define illusion as something which doesn't exist. You will soon discover the truth. An illusion is merely a creation. A creation is anything that can be sensed or experienced. It's that simple. People have the silly idea that their own dreams and fantasies aren't real or that they don't exist. Nonsense. Naturally, you assume that your own illusions aren't real because they are not extremely vivid and solid. Your illusions aren't vivid and solid because you haven't been practicing. Your certainty and confidence is poor. Understand something very, very important. The physical universe is a universe constructed on a great deal of certainty. The objects, energy, and all the other illusions that comprise the physical universe were created with tremendous confidence and certainty. That is the only difference between the illusions of this universe and your own illusions. Certainty. Never let anyone convince you that your own creations and fantasies aren't real. They are. They may not be extremely clear and vivid right now, but they do exist. Here is a very, very valuable piece of wisdom that can pull you out of doubt and confusion. If it can be experienced, it exists. You cannot experience something which doesn't exist. Something else you should know about your dreams. A dream is perfectly real, very convincing, and it has full emotional impact on you, as long as you are in it. The moment you wake up, you know the truth, that the dream was only an illusion. The same is true for the universe. It seems very real, it's very convincing, and it has lots of emotional impact, as long as you are in it. The minute that you leave it, you know the truth. That this universe, like your dream, is merely an illusion. People are convinced that this universe couldn't be an illusion because it's so solid, so real, so difficult to control. And that's my point. They are convinced. So you see, you do not need to be convinced of anything further, my son. You need confidence and certainty. Certainty comes from within. Talawanda continued. Enough proof. Would you like to improve your certainty in the creation of illusions? Sure, Walter replied. Good. Then close your eyes. Now envision a bar of gold. Do you see it? Well, sort of, but it's kind of vague, Walter responded. All right. Now, concentrate to make it feel a little more solid. Can you do that? Yes, Walter replied more confidently. Very good. Next, make it feel cold and heavy. Now, here's the question. Can you perceive it or experience it to some degree? Pretty well, Walter answered. Good. Then it's real. It exists. Remember, you cannot experience something that doesn't exist. But it must be an illusion because other people cannot see it. Only I can, Walter insisted. Certainty, my son, certainty. That is the only reason others cannot see your illusions, and that is the only difference between you and me. Practice and certainty. Talawanda signalled Walter to return to his seat. Well, my friends, that concludes this evening's performance, Talawanda informed his pupils. I thought you were going to do one more miracle, a member of the audience begged. My friend, if you absorbed half of what I told you tonight, then a miracle has indeed occurred. However, I have a very special surprise for you this evening. Many of you are wondering how I do my illusions. In case you haven't figured it out yet, I will explain it again in a different way. Unlike your conventional magic, I do not come equipped with props and devices. I require only myself to create anything imaginable. What you do with props and trickery, I accomplish with ideas and illusions brought to life by my certainty. That is my secret. Certainty. If you want to be free, then become certain that your illusions are real. Create illusions every day. It does not matter how weak or vague they are at first. Just continue to practice, and soon the chains of doubt and uncertainty which bind you to this universe will vanish forever. On that day, you will be fully awake once more, and you shall be free. For you will know the truth, that everything you once thought to be so overpowering was just another dream. Thank you very much. Good night. Talawanda turned and walked backstage. The audience rose to its feet in final salute. The applause was deafening. Walter smiled and asked me, "Well, what do you think of Talawanda?" Wow, was all I could say and think all the way home. Chapter 2. Saturday and Sunday, July 22nd and 23rd, 1978. All weekend I laid around the house, dwelling on Talawanda. I only wished that somehow I could have attracted his attention so that he would at least know I existed. I sat and wondered things like, where does he live? What does he do for fun? Oh, would he even like me? I had one of those depressing feelings you get, like when you're in Las Vegas and you miss the big jackpot by just one number. Life goes on, was my last thought, as I settled down to sleep early Sunday night. Monday, July 24th, 1978. Next morning, I woke up still feeling numb. As I got ready and headed for work, I kept searching for things in my future that I could look forward to. Christmas was about the best I could come up with, but it was still months away. What am I going to do until then, I wondered. As I headed down Wiltshire Boulevard and approaching the building where I worked, I strained to radiate the cheerful, professional appearance which was an essential part of my job. "Good morning, Alana. How was your weekend?" my boss inquired as I stepped into the office. "Wonderful," I responded with a forced smile. "By the way, Alana, you aren't using the company teletype machine for your personal use, are you?" Why no, sir. Why'd you ask?" I inquired with concern. "Well, a teletype message came in over the wire early this morning for you from someone in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil." "Do you have a copy of the message?" I eagerly inquired. "No, it's still on the teletype machine. I noticed it when it started coming in, but I never finished reading it." My boss headed for his office and then stopped, turned around again and said, "One last thing, Alana. I'm switching the vacation schedules around, and it seems that you will have to either take your vacation this week, your annual vacation, or wait until next Easter. Let me know what you decide." "Yes, sir," I replied, as I walked eagerly to the teletype machine in the back room. I pulled the paper off the machine and began to read the message. "Dear Alana, I was very impressed with you last Friday evening. Forgive me for not paying enough attention to you. However, I was busy. Permit me to make up for that oversight. You are invited to come and spend a week or so with me in Rio de Janeiro. I'm sure that it could very well be the most pleasurable and educational experience you've had this lifetime. You may contact Pan Am Airlines, where there will be a round-trip first-class ticket to Rio available and waiting for you this coming Wednesday. I hope you decide in favour of this invitation. The choice is yours. Eternally, Talawanda." I practically fainted. This can't really be happening. I touched the walls to make sure I wasn't dreaming. I immediately ran to my boss's office and said, "Sir, how soon can I start that vacation?" Casually pulling the pipe from his mouth, he paused, exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "Well, you could start today if you wanted to. I think we have things pretty well covered here from the time big." It was too good to be true. Everything was happening magically. I hurried home to organise my trip, but as I pulled up outside my apartment, a thought suddenly occurred to me. How did he know who I was, and how did he know where to contact me? I couldn't wait to hear how he pulled off that trick. I could hardly fall asleep that night. I was so excited. I called all my girlfriends to tell them the wonderful news. One of my girlfriends was so excited that she asked me, "Does he have any brothers?" I laughed. "Brothers? Hell, I don't even know his last name." As I was lying in bed, it occurred to me that I should perform I should confirm my tickets with Pan Am to make sure this guy wasn't pulling my leg. I called the airlines and spoke to the reservations agent. Hello, this is Alana Taylor. I'd like to confirm my reservations on your flight to Rio on Wednesday and to see if my tickets have been paid for yet. One moment, please. Yes, Miss Taylor, we show you confirmed on our flight. You are confirmed on our flight, and the tickets are available and waiting for you at the airport ticket counter. They have been waiting there since last Thursday. Last Thursday? Well, that's impossible. Are you sure? I inquired in disbelief. There's no question about it, Miss Taylor. Your tickets have been paid for and waiting since last Thursday, July 20th. Is there anything else I could help you with? No, thank you, I responded in shock and hung up the telephone. Too many weird things were going on. I never saw this man before in my life until last Friday, and even then I was never introduced to him, and now I find out that he's bought and paid for airline tickets for me in my name one day before I even saw him at the castle. This man had a lot of explaining to do. Tuesday, July 25th, 1978. Next morning, I woke up in a continued daze of excitement. I rushed around town getting odds and ends for my trip. I picked up my visa at the Brazilian consulate and headed home to finish packing. I'd never been to Brazil, and very few of my friends had, but I heard it was enchanting and very romantic. As I went over my packing checklist one last time, it suddenly dawned on me that the only way this guy could know my every move was if Walter Haber was in on it somehow. So I worked out a little plan to call his bluff. I called up Walter. Hello, Walter. Alana here. How you doing? Fine, Alana. Hey, I heard incredible news at work about your trip to Brazil. Sounds pretty fantastic. Well, I'm starting to have second thoughts about it now, and I might not go. After all, the guys are a little too mysterious for me. Can't say as I blame you. Just trust your instincts. If you feel you shouldn't go, then don't go. Brazil will be there next year, Walter advised. Talk to you later, Walter. Bye-bye. Well, that wasn't exactly the response I expected from an accomplice. All I could do now was wait and see if Walter was behind this thing somehow. Just after I got off the phone, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was greeted by a lovely bouquet of red roses. I was astonished. The young man said, "Delivery for Alana Taylor." I thanked him and closed the door. I noticed the attached envelope. The enclosed note read, "My dear Alana, I am delighted that you have chosen to join me in Brazil. Your judgment is impeccable. A limousine will come to your apartment at 10 o'clock in the morning and take you to the airport. Forever. Talawanda. P.S. I care about you too much to play games with romance. Walter is innocent. Soon you will understand." I guess that answered my question. I was overwhelmed. Chapter 3. Wednesday, July 26th, 1978, Los Angeles. I was all packed and ready to go. At 9:58 a.m. I looked out of the window of my apartment and noticed that a beautiful Cadillac limousine was just arriving. I was elated and could hardly wait to begin my adventure. The rest of the morning was spent checking in at the airport and preparing for departure. Before I knew it, the airplane was racing down the runway. Then with one continuous surge of power, it raised its wings into the wind, and we were airborne. As I looked down over Los Angeles, I could hardly believe this was happening to me. Attempting to quiet my excitement, I settled back into my seat and began my 24-hour journey. Thursday, July 27th, 1978, Rio de Janeiro. I awoke in a nervous condition. A million things were going through my mind. And then suddenly, my trance was broken by the voice over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are on our final approach of Rio de Janeiro Airport. I'll ask you at this time to kindly return your tray tables to their full upright and locked positions and make sure that your seatbelt is securely fastened. Again, thank you for flying Pan Am." The closer we got to the ground, the more nervous I became. What should I say? How should I act? Then, all of a sudden, I felt this immense tranquil peace which completely engulfed me. I was instantly at ease, as if some hypnotist had just snapped his fingers and said, "Relax." The plane glided to the runway for what was probably the smoothest and quietest landing in the history of aviation. The passengers marched off the plane in single file and were processed swiftly through Brazilian customs. As I passed through the doors and final checkpoint of customs, there he was, just as I remembered him on that first spellbinding evening at the Magick castle. He captured me with those beautiful blue eyes and said, "Come, my darling. There are many questions to be answered." There's a crow outside just telling me about the questions that need to be answered. He relieved me of my heavy luggage and escorted me to his car. It was a custom-designed Brazilian sports car, which resembled a Ferrari. We drove directly from the airport to a lush tropical scene where an electrical tram awaited to take us to the top of a very high mountain called Corcovado. It offered us a spectacular view overlooking the city of Rio. At the top of the mountain was a charming little cafe and the very famous monument known as Christ of Corcovado. It was a giant statue of Jesus overlooking Rio, with his arms spread wide open. We arrived at the mountaintop cafe and ordered some tasty Brazilian dishes and freshly squeezed orange juice. "Why me, Talawanda?" I asked. "There are a million beautiful women between here and California. Why did you choose me?" Looking as though he wished to return to some distant past, he paused and explained. "I loved you before California even existed." One does not abandon his companion just because the pages of history grow too old to remember. You are important to me. I will not always be here. But before I am gone for good, you shall know the answer to your own question. I felt an uncontrollable shiver overtake my entire body. I paused, uncertain of his meaning, and then I just asked the next most logical question. Just how old are you, Talawanda? He smiled and replied, How old am I? Or how old is this body? Which question do you ask? Like you, I have always been around, but I am unlike the humans who are imprisoned on this planet today. You see, I never lost track of who I am. As for this body, well, just how old would you like it to be, my darling? He looked at me playfully and smiled. I smiled along with him and continued my interrogation. Tell me about your business, your hobbies. Where do you come from? You know, I don't even know your last name. Well, first of all, I am an educator, a teacher. I have been to and come from so many different and faraway places that I will have to explain that as a story of its own. My calling card is this body, which I call Talawanda. I see no need for a first and last name at this time, so Talawanda is all I go by. I never wish to frighten or overwhelm people, therefore I use the occupation of magician as a safeguard. That way, people always have an explanation when they do not understand my messages and tricks. As far as what I do for a hobby, well, what would you do if your own illusions were so vivid and satisfying that you could have anything you wanted simply by creating it? I giggled and said, I wouldn't be working for a living, that's for sure. Talawanda laughed and said, That's right. And you wouldn't spend very much time hanging around the office, watching other people work now, would you? Well, it's the same with me and my relationship with the physical universe. I spend very little time here. It is actually dangerous for any powerful being to spend excessive amounts of time here without running the risk of becoming trapped. I frequently have to leave here and return to my own universe. That is the only way I can remain exterior to a game that I do not wish to play. This fascinated me, so I inquired, You said earlier that this universe was merely a dream, an illusion. Well, if this is true, then how can an illusion trap you? Talawanda smiled and said, That is a very good question. Now, let me ask you this. How did it trap you and the countless other beings who stepped in here? You came here for fun and enjoyment, and because this universe continued to entertain you like a giant amusement park, you gradually, over trillions of years, dwindled down in power and awareness. Why? Because this universe supplied you with all your pleasure and sensation. You stopped creating for yourself, and consequently, you became lazier and weaker from failure to exercise your powers. Look around you. Countless beings who could once move planets around now need telescopes just to see them. People wonder how an illusion can inflict pain on them. It's because they are under the hypnotic spell of this entire universe, a spell that has convinced them that they have no powers. They were once masters over this universe, and now they are confused, hypnotized, slaves, all because they stopped exercising their powers of illusion, their imaginations. Instead of doing the intelligent thing and waving their magic wands and garnishing the environment with beauty, they continue to search for beauty and excitement in the physical universe like a tractor stuck in mud. They continue to dig themselves in deeper and deeper. Heaven is not a place you go to. It's a high-level state of awareness and certainty. In this state, the individual is capable of making illusions of such a vivid and satisfying quality that he no longer depends on this universe for pleasure. Pointing to the statue of Christ, Talawanda said, "That's all he was trying to say." Half believing what he was telling me, I asked, "Did you know Christ?" He smiled warmly with a distant gaze and uttered, "Better than anyone would ever imagine." I wanted him to clarify that remark, but my trance was broken when the waiter arrived with our food. I was eager to hear more, but Talawanda shifted the conversation back down to earthly matters and asked, "Well, what do you think of the food?" "It's delicious. And the orange juice is so fresh and pure. I can't believe this view. I can see for miles." Thank you, Talawanda. Thank you so much for this incredible experience. He looked at me for almost a minute with those sincere romantic eyes as he gently held my hand and then uttered, "You are indeed welcome. The pleasure is mine." We finished lunch, then headed back down the mountain in the tram. Upon reaching the bottom, we hopped back in his car and continued our journey. We passed through the streets of Rio on our way to his home. I had visited Mexico before, but this was Latin living at its finest. The climate, the shops, the culture. Everything was alive and magical. It was approaching late afternoon as we passed through Ipanema and Copacabana beaches. I was electrified. We drove for some time and headed away from the city into a more rural, tropical scene. We turned down a narrow road and surrounded by heavy, tropical vegetation. There was a wonderful mystical feeling in the air as the shadows of dusk began to sneak up on us. It felt very adventurous, yet safe being with Talawanda. We came upon an old, massive rock wall, which we followed for some distance. It led us to a heavy iron gate with ornate designs. Talawanda stopped the car, looked over at me and said, "Well, say the magic words." I hesitated for a moment, not understanding his humour. Then I called on and jokingly said, "Open sesame." I hope those are the right words. Immediately after I said that, the massive old gate started to creak open and groan. Talawanda said, "It doesn't really matter what words you use. It's your intentions and wishes that count. Don't confuse words with wishes." I giggled. They replied, "You'll have to teach me that trick." He paused, then whispered to me, "That's precisely what I intend to do." When the gate pulled completely open, we drove through. I turned around and watched as it began to slowly close. We had travelled for some distance when suddenly a magnificent castle emerged through the heavily overgrown jungle. I was astonished and puzzled as I said, "Oh my goodness, it's beautiful, but it seems so out of place." "Out of place?" Talawanda asked. "Well, it's just what place do you think this is?" I responded, "Well, I mean, it's so different than I expected to see in South America." "My darling, we are no closer to South America at this time than we are to the physical universe. Welcome to my universe. You are in my space now. All the creations around here are my illusions, and you may share them with me. There is no better place to learn what I teach. This is not a place that can be reached by train or rocket ship. It is a place that can only be achieved by imagination. I will take you back any time you desire, but first, let me show you around. You will learn much." Somewhat puzzled, I said, "I don't understand. I clearly remember driving all the way here." He continued, "The moment we passed through that iron gate, we passed out of the physical universe. I did it that way so it would be a smooth transition for you. I created this universe for our enjoyment. You are very important to me." As we pulled up to the entrance, I thought to myself, wow, the boys at work can sure learn a thing about architecture here. 3 servants, 2 men and a woman, appeared from the front entrance as our car came to a halt. The men assisted us and unloaded my luggage. Talawanda looked at me and said, "Since you are still under the influence of habits which you developed in the physical universe, such as food and sleep, I will accommodate you." Turning to his female servant, he said, "Athena, I would like you to show Alana our finest hospitality and accommodations." He again turned to me and uttered, "I have some things to attend to, so I shall see you in the morning, and we will begin your lessons." Delighted beyond words, I looked at him and said, "You're an incredible host, Talawanda. Thank you." He smiled and replied, "You're an incredible guest, my darling. You're welcome." Chapter 4. The entire evening was unforgettable. Athena escorted me around the kingdom. The tour began with the castle itself. At the entrance stood 2 magnificent jade birds, 20 feet high, with wings uplifted in greeting. As we stepped inside, I was overwhelmed by the splendour and beauty which I beheld all around. The ceilings were over 75 feet high and were made out of rubies and sapphires, which formed beautiful mosaic patterns. The castle floor was made of highly polished gold tile, illuminating the entire scene, were the largest, most breathtaking crystal chandeliers I had ever seen. In the distance, I could hear beautiful classical music echoing through the castle with the same quality and flavour of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. We walked into an enormous covered garden where the air was filled with the smell of fresh sweet honeysuckle and apple blossom. A huge gushing fountain sprayed a huge mist of water, ceaselessly quenching the thirst of the plants which surrounded it. One entire wall was formed of nothing but a series of cascading waterfalls, giving the air a crisp, cool freshness. Everywhere I turned was abundance. An abundance of stunningly beautiful flowers and blossoming trees. Lovely coloured birds flew freely throughout the garden, giving the scene a tranquil tropical sensation. Beams of light shone down from the ceiling like sunlight peeping through the foliage of a tropical rainforest. Lush green ferns and brightly coloured flowers grew abundantly from between the rocks which surrounded a quiet little stream. Following the stream to its source, we came upon a tranquil pond with swans and breathtaking, colourful and exotic fish. Pausing momentarily at the pond, Athena inquired, "Are you getting hungry?" Stunned and overwhelmed by all the beauty, I replied, "Yes, but could we finish touring the kingdom first?" She smiled and said, "I'm afraid that's not quite possible. You see, Talawanda does not believe in scarcity. He never established boundaries for his kingdom. That's not to say he couldn't, it's just that he hasn't. There are sights and sensations in this universe which you would probably never dream of. He cares about you very much. He created parts of his world just for you. There are many creations here which resemble the physical universe. He feels that it is important to give you things you can recognize and relate to easily." Still not fully understanding, I asked, "How does he afford all this?" Athena looked somewhat puzzled and inquired, "Afford? What do you mean by this?" "I mean, how did he get all of this abundance?" She explained, "He did not get any of this. He created it." In astonishment, I repeated her words. "He created it?" "Yes. He makes all his creations simply by envisioning them. You know, let there be light, and suddenly it's there. All the space, all the objects, all the sights and sounds, the gravity, the smells, the oxygen and light, everything, even the plant and animal life, including me." "That's right. He granted me life, and now I can do the same things he can. Not quite as well just yet, but I'm working on it. When he brought me into existence, I was given the name Athena because it reminds him of someone he loves very much." Almost speechless, I asked, "You mean to tell me that this is all an illusion?" Athena patiently affirmed, "Of course it is. How could it be anything but an illusion? An illusion is merely a creation. How could anything in any universe be anything but an illusion? Everything in every universe had to have been materialized by someone. That's obvious. Things are brought into existence simply by envisioning them. Everyone can do that. It's just some beings practice more than others. Beings in the physical universe aren't really confused about whether it's an illusion or not. Deep down, they suspect that it is. See, people have three major problems. One is their mystery about where all the objects and space and energy came from. Two is how they themselves got there. And three is their inability to control those illusions easily. They don't think it's an illusion because it doesn't feel like an illusion. It doesn't feel like an illusion because it doesn't behave and obey their wishes and commands like an illusion normally does. Normally, an illusion would do exactly what you command it to do, but the physical universe doesn't behave like your typical illusion. It's very challenging and very stubborn. They can't figure it out. Someone would like it to stop raining, and it goes on raining. You want the dog next door to stop barking, and he goes right on barking. They want to win the big jackpot in Las Vegas, and they go home broke. Well, it doesn't obey their wishes because they have been convinced not to exercise their powers and control over it. So now, instead of making things happen magically, instantly and without effort, everything is done slowly with machines and physical effort. That's why it's called the physical universe. It's gotten too physical, too difficult to control. Talawanda says that everyone needs games and challenges, but it's gotten out of hand here. There. Success is too difficult to achieve, and when someone does achieve it, you can't keep it forever. He also says that there is nothing really big and important to strive for there. The prizes of that universe are small compared to what you can have if you restore your own universe. I interrupted. You mean I have my own universe too? Athena smiled wisely and said, Yes, Alana, you do. Everyone does. But you call it by a different name. You call it your imagination. Only half understanding what Athena was talking about, I mentioned, well, imagination or not is like heaven here. She smiled and said, Now you're catching on. After the tour, I enjoyed an absolutely marvellous dinner. It seemed that they liked the same things I did because my favourite dishes were there. Following dinner, Athena escorted me to the bedroom provided for me. It was heavenly. The canopy bed, elegant drapes, the rugs, the furniture, everything was just what I had envisioned for the perfect bedroom. As she was leaving my bedroom, I turned to her and said, Thanks for everything, Athena. She seemed very happy to see me enjoying myself. She smiled and said, Don't thank me, thank Talawanda. Like I said, the man cares about you very much. Good night now.